This is Career Composer. I'm Erin, and I'm helping you, professionals under 30, navigate your careers with a music-themed twist. I'm giving you the job search and career advice you need to get that job, but we'll also talk about music, how to balance our personal and professional lives, and figure out what we're meant to do. Ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I'm Erin, and thanks for tuning in for another amazing guest episode of Career Composer. I'm chatting with Arianna Risilia about how to be more creative at work and why it's so important, not just because it makes work so much more fun, but because it can have a dramatic impact on the long-term trajectories of our careers as Gen Z professionals. Gen Z is the reason why I am so excited to share this episode. If you are a professional in your 20s, you are hyper aware that as a generation, we are constantly undervalued and underestimated. It really hurts sometimes. And it's my goal as a career counselor to change this perception because we are so talented and so valuable. In my opinion, Gen Z stands out because we are more creative and innovative, maybe than any other generation that has come before us. Creativity is at the core of our experience, no matter who you are or what field you work in. It's our baseline. And what do I mean by that? Let me explain by sharing a clip from our episode. Arianna, what's a baseline?
It's the lowest pitched instrumental part in a song, and it outlines the harmonic structure of the song. But it's so much more than that. It's the foundation of the song, and oftentimes we don't even realize how important it is until you don't hear it. When the bass stops playing, it almost feels like the song loses its body, it loses its heart, and could fall apart because it's everything. I think the bass is the coolest instrument. Without the bass line, it feels unstable.
So the point is, without creativity, our song, our personal theme song, isn't stable. Creativity is at the heart of who we are as humans, especially our generation.
It is. It's in every decision we make.
You heard it here first. Creativity is the beating heart of our generation. If you're still thinking, Erin, I'm not so sure about that, just listen till the end of today's episode. And of course, by the end of this episode, you will also know exactly how you can tap into your unique creativity at work. This is a very light, easy listening episode. Listen to it as you're getting ready for work or just going about your day. It is also pretty long. We're going to hit the 1 hour mark, so feel free to use the episode markers to jump to the parts that most interest you. Most Career Composer episodes are filled with actionable tips to help you navigate your careers in your 20s. Last episode, we started our 3-part series on LinkedIn where I'm helping you build a LinkedIn profile from scratch that has all of the necessary components you need to make sure your LinkedIn account is networking ready. We're in the thick of networking season right now, so make sure you check out this episode. One last thing before we get into it. Who is our guest today? Arianna Risilia is a friend of mine and an elementary school general music teacher in Eastern Pennsylvania. She is an amazing jazz singer and loves so many different genres of music, so you will hear two friends chatting about Ella Fitzgerald, Bob Marley, and Joni Mitchell. So many genres of music are covered in this episode. Arianna also loves nature and trying new things, and she is such a kind, sweet person with a lot to say about why creativity is key to our success. That's a taste of what you're in for in today's episode. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Career Composer, and make sure to leave a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps. Ready? Let's go. Hi, Arianna.
Hi, Erin.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so happy to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
This is going to be so much fun. So today we're talking about creativity at work. I'm so excited for our audience to hear more about you and what you do for work in just a couple of minutes. But first, I want to share how we know each other and how this conversation came to be. So you and I met through our amazing mutual friends, Anthony and Megan. They just got engaged. We got to see each other at their engagement party in December. And I actually wanted to tell you about the first time that I heard about you from Anthony, which is when
You may have heard this before. It's when Anthony and I were in college, and he was telling me about all of his amazing friends back home that I just had to meet at some point. And he said, my friend Ariana, she is an amazing singer. And then he pulled out his phone and showed me an Instagram video of you scatting on stage, jazz singing, which was amazing. So from that point forward, I thought, okay, this girl is awesome. I have to meet her.
That is so nice of you. And I vaguely remember that when we first met, I remember you saying like, "Yeah, Anthony showed me this video of you singing and you were scatting." And I was cringing inside. I was like, "Oh gosh." But shout out Anthony, thank you for saying all those kind things. And I remember Anthony saying, "Oh yeah, you're gonna love Erin. She's such a cool person and she's a singer too."
Oh, yeah. Well, and here we are. And like you said, your vibe, what'd you say? You said your vibe attracts your tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a phrase. Yes. Um, so for our audience, what is scatting? And how did you get into jazz as one of your favorite genres of music?
So I got into jazz from a really young age. I was into music from the time that I can remember. My dad played tenor saxophone and he loved jazz standards. But specifically for like any jazz heads, he loved like hard bop and bebop, which is not the most digestible to the ear. It's a lot of like fast saxophone, drums, and it sounds kind of like a cacophony. Um, so that's what I grew up listening to. And I remember my dad would try to get me to listen to jazz vocal tunes. And at first, I didn't really like them. The only person I liked was Ella Fitzgerald. And I remember being maybe in third grade, and he showed me a Tisket a Tasket, the Ella Fitzgerald version.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with it. And I sang it for the talent show in fourth grade, and I played the chords on piano. So I've liked jazz since probably third or fourth grade. Um, and then I just have another like specific memory of sitting on the table and listening to Adele's 19 album because I know you like.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a couple songs on there that are jazzy. I don't know if you know Right as Rain.
I love that song. Yes.
Me too. And it's pretty fast and her words are a little bit hard to understand. Um, so I loved the song so much. I would just play it on repeat. Like I would put the CD player in and I would play like the track over and over again and
Oh,
I would try to sing it back. And so I just remember being obsessed with it and that is what sparked my love of jazz specifically. Yeah, and I've always loved it since then.
I love that. Okay, did you, when you were a little kid on the bus or at school, when you were listening to music, did you have one of those portable CD players with wired headphones and you popped a CD in it? Like the circular portable CD players?
No, did you?
Oh my gosh, yes. I had a Hannah Montana portable CD player, and I had a little, like our parents would have in their cars, one of those like CD holders. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, like
Whether
we
you flip through the
do.
CDs. Yeah, and I had all the Hannah Montana CDs and Katy Perry's albums and whatever CDs my parents gifted to me.
I love that. Oh, and you would take it on the bus?
Yeah,
Horrible.
I was such a nerdy kid.
Oh, same.
So that is so cool that your love for jazz literally started from the time you were in elementary school. And so fast forward to now, you've had an extensive music career in high school and college, and now music is a huge part of your full-time job. So what are your favorite jazz artists today, if you had to pick a couple?
Oh, I love that question. It's so hard, but I just think that's such a great question to ask anybody because it really makes you think. I thought about it a lot, and I have to narrow it down to two. I couldn't pick just one.
Okay,
Still Ella Fitzgerald and also Sarah Vaughan, but I would highly recommend listening to both of them. And
awesome.
who do you like? What jazz artists do you like?
So I love George Gershwin. So when I was performing in classical piano competitions, one of the pieces that I never got to perform, but that I always loved, it's Gershwin's Three Preludes on the piano. Have you ever heard of them?
I haven't.
Okay, so you have to check them out. Um,
Well,
yeah, and so George Gershwin, he wrote Rhapsody in Blue, which I guess you could call it's like a jazz concerto.
yeah,
Is that a
I
thing?
think that's great. I don't know if that's real, but I love that.
Yes, I love Rhapsody in Blue. And then I really started getting into jazz when I had my first job. It was at a local farm store where I'm from in Boyertown, Pennsylvania. And the owner was actually my piano teacher's parents. So everything was connected in my small little town. But at the farm store, it had a really jazzy vibe. So they played the same jazz playlist on repeat, the same 30 songs. So I really so I have that song, Tomato, Tomato, Potato, Potato. Let's call the whole thing off. Do you know
Yeah.
what song I'm talking about?
Yes, you like potatoes and I like potatoes. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, your voice is so beautiful. Even though
Oh,
you're
you're kind. Not after teaching all week, but thank you.
yeah, so I will have that song living in my head rent free for the rest of my life because I heard it so many times at work.
That that sounds a little torturous, but don't you love how jazz can really cultivate a certain vibe, just like any genre of music, but don't you feel like it suits a certain energy that you probably got from working at the farm store?
Yeah. I mean, I did ask the manager why it was always the same playlist, and he said it's because our customers love it. It makes them want to buy tomatoes and tomatoes. No,
Oh,
like he didn't say that, but like it was a produce store. So yeah, it made sense.
yeah, that's adorable.
Yeah. One question that I always ask everybody on Career Composer is what is your favorite song, your favorite album, and your favorite artist? And this does not have to just be jazz related, but I would love to know what your answer is to that question.
I love that. That's so challenging, and I vacillated so much thinking about that. Um, this might be surprising. I think my favorite album is Legend, The Best of Bob Marley.
Really?
Yeah, I love reggae and I always go back to it. I've just always gravitated towards it over the years. It's one of those albums that you always bring back into your listening. And it's also an album where every single song I love. And I feel like there aren't many albums that are like that. And then my follow-ups were Fleetwood Mac Rumors, which is probably surprising too.
Yes, I love that album.
It's amazing. And Tapestry, Carol King. Every song is amazing. So for favorite album, that's what I would say. What would you say?
Well, it's so funny you mentioned Tapestry because we just talked about that on a previous Career Composer episode. This is so wild. But when at my second part-time job, when I worked at CVS for 6 years and I had my first hand-me-down car, I blew out the speakers in my car because I was listening to two albums on repeat on full volume. And they were Tapestry and Made in the AM by One Direction. And that's how I blew out my speakers, which is so wild because those two albums could not be farther apart on the music spectrum.
I think that's hilarious that you, in your high school days, were rocking out to some Carol King and you
Yes.
blasted your speakers. That's hilarious.
Yep. Yeah, I was something else. But my answer to this question, it's no secret. I'm an Adele super fan. It's getting boring at this point because I talk about Adele so much. But favorite album is 21 by Adele. And the reason why is because that's what got me into playing piano. I finally started practicing when I heard Adele's 21 album. And my mom gave me the piano book for Christmas. And then, so that's definitely my favorite album. Favorite song for the longest time was You Belong With Me by Taylor Swift. Nothing special.
Oh, Aaron.
Yeah, it brings me back to those days. Like I was what's the lyric? She's cheer captain and I'm on the bleachers. And with the music video of her playing in the band on the bleachers, that was me.
Oh, so
Yeah,
you felt like you really embodied, like you were Taylor Swift.
I was in that song. Yes. Yes. Nerdy band kid.
Oh,
And favorite artist, I mean, besides Adele, that's a tough one. I want to go back to what you said about how special it is for certain albums where every single song is just amazing and you could listen to the album on repeat. When I think about my favorite artist, I do go back to that because I think it's so special when someone can make an entire album of songs that become hits. So I think about Chapel Roan right now. Like her recent album, every single song is amazing. And that is so difficult to do.
it is. And it's so funny because, I'm an elementary general music teacher, so we have like 20 years on the kids that I teach, or 15 years. But they love this new album.
Do
And
they
so,
listen to Chapel Roan? The
yeah,
elementary school kids?
yeah, they love
So
that.
they're singing Kink is Karma and Casual. Do they know the words to those songs?
I don't know. I'm scared to ask them, but they like it.
That is so funny. Oh my gosh, that is hysterical. One more thing before we move into our topic. Something you recently told me is that, as we were talking about Rolling Stone's top 500 albums of all time, speaking of amazing albums where every song hits, you mentioned you mentioned Joni Mitchell, and we were talking about her album Blue and the song A Case of You. Please tell our audience what you told me about Amanda Seyfried on Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah. So I loved this because the comments were so good on TikTok. So Amanda Seyfried, or Seyfried, I don't know how you pronounce her name. She was on Jimmy Fallon, and she takes out a dulcimer, which for those of you who don't know, it's a string instrument that sounds similar to a guitar, but it's like flipping a guitar flat on its back. And so she just pulls it out and she's like, "Okay, Jimmy, are you ready?" And he's like, "Yeah." And she starts playing California by Joni Mitchell on the dulcimer, and she sings it so beautifully. Her timbre was exactly like Joni Mitchell's. And the comments were freaking out. They're like, "I didn't know she could sing." Well, yeah, she was in Mamma Mia, she was in Les Mis, but
Yeah.
it's amazing. If you haven't heard it, I would recommend checking it out. But also, if for our listeners that don't know Joni Mitchell, I would highly recommend listening to Joni Mitchell.
Love Joni Mitchell. And Amanda, yeah, I'm not sure how you pronounce her last name either, but she got her vocal training from someone in Allentown, Pennsylvania, like where we're from. Like so many, Taylor Swift was from Wyomissing, Pennsylvania. We've got Amanda. There are so many people from our corner of the earth,
Yes,
from our area that became really famous.
we have talent in Pennsylvania.
We really do. We really do. So, you and I was so excited for this episode because we could talk about music all day long. But getting into our topic, today we're talking about creativity at work and why innovation is Gen Z's baseline. So, I think our audience is dying to know, Arianna, who are you and what do you do for work?
I am a general music teacher for elementary school. So I teach general music to students in first through sixth grade. That is a class like your let's go to gym, let's go to art, let's go to music. So I'm the specialist category. I don't know why they call us that, but you get the point.
Yeah.
Kind of a fun job because the kids usually look forward to that little break in their day where they get to leave their general classroom and go do something different than, taking tests or reading or writing. So that is my job, and I love it. I love it way more than I ever expected.
That's amazing. And I look up to you so much because you have such a positive impact on those kids' lives. But what else should our audience know about you? What do you like to do outside of work? I know you recently went on a trip. Tell us about that.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. So I do love traveling. And that's an amazing part of teaching is you have the whole summer off, but you also have those little long weekends where the kids are off. So we went on President's Day weekend, my boyfriend and I, who's wonderful. We went to Death Valley, Nevada, and it was incredible. It was soul healing, and the sun was so warm, and the nature was amazing. We also got to do it via camper van.
Which is so cool.
Thank you. It was amazing. I would recommend if you could travel in a camper van, I would highly recommend that because you are where your house is. Everywhere you go, you have your house with you. And that just expands the amount of time you can ultimately spend in nature. And you wake up and you're looking at mountains and you can take your cup of coffee out and explore the sand dunes or explore the wildflowers with a cup of coffee in hand. And it was amazing.
That sounds so beautiful. I'm so jealous. Yeah, that's such a cool piece of who you are, that you enjoy traveling and seeing different parts of the world.
Thank you. I love traveling and anything to do with nature. Um, that's something that fuels me and fuels my creativity is spending time outside in nature, gardening, um, meditating outside, not in a traditional sense, but just taking in the sounds of nature and the sights. I also love thrifting. I love spending time with my family and friends. Oh, crafting. I'm always down for craft.
Okay.
Yeah,
I did not know that about you.
yeah. And just trying new things, seeing new places. I love to change it up. I love to go to a new coffee shop, get a different order at a restaurant, take little day trips, explore new parks. I think that these are all things that definitely fuel my soul. And I'm grateful that I have a job where I can do those little excursions.
Amazing. So, speaking of creativity, what role does creativity play in your job? So, how do you get to be creative at work, and how do your students get to be creative too?
That's a great question. I get to be creative all the time. I was thinking about this, and almost in everything you do as a teacher, you're making a decision in the moment of how you want to execute the lesson. And sometimes that's very fatiguing, but sometimes it's really inspiring. So, some of the ways I get to be creative are in making lesson plans. And at first, that was really daunting to have to come up with something from scratch, basically. Like, what am I going to teach these kids that's going to spark interest in them? Because it's all about the buy in, you want them to buy in.
Yeah.
So, I have a lot of fun coming up with fun ways to make music more engaging. And a lot of times we make things into games. So, when I teach them a new song, I'll think, like, oh, what game? How can we gamify this? So, that's one way. And then I also recently this year have been getting into just finding more joy in making the lesson plans because it can get very draining. So instead of just using like PowerPoint, I use Canva now. And
Which I love.
it's so fun, right?
Yeah. It's like making a PowerPoint can be so boring, but it can be so fun.
Yes. And last year I was in survival mode because it was my first year teaching. But this year I use my downtime instead of getting distracted by my phone. I go on Canva and I play around with the visuals and I like put all my YouTube links in there for the kids. And that's something that I get to play around with that makes lesson planning a little bit more fun. Oh, in classroom management strategies, surprisingly, I find myself trying to come up with new ways to do it all the time.
Okay.
A silly example is when I'm trying to get them to be quiet when they're having instruments in hand. That's a challenge, obviously. It's like so tempting not to play the xylophone in front of you.
Right.
What I do is I say bug antennas for the younger grades. So with their mallets, they'll take their mallets and put them on their head, and I say bug antennas, and then they stop playing. And then they think it's a game, and I'm like, oh, Billy, first place bug antennas, Lauren, second place. And they're like, oh, how fast can I get these bug antennas up? And just little things like that. Or I'll clap different patterns, like not just the standard like teacher clap back when you hear me to get their attention. Like I'll mix up the patterns, or I'll do weird like vocalizations and I'll have them echo me. I think being weird and funny catches their attention, and then it makes them get quiet. So that's kind of a classroom management hack. If you want them to stop talking, do something crazy. So those are just some ways that I get to be creative. And in terms of how the kids get to be creative, they naturally have so many ideas and it's so inspiring. And they're unafraid to try new things, which is amazing. So if I say, okay, now we're going to sing the song in a silly voice, what are some silly voices we can think of? They will come up with so many. They'll say, let's do it like a robot. Let's do it in an opera voice. Let's do it in a squirrel voice. I'm like, okay, what's a squirrel voice? I'm so excited to hear it. Um, so I like to let them explore with different ways of musicking to make it fun. And then if we're coming up with body percussion instead of just keeping the steady beat on their lap, I might say, how else could we keep the steady beat? And then they have great ideas. And sometimes they'll want to come up to the front of the classroom and show everybody. And I've had kids like dab on the beat. I've had
Oh
kids
my gosh.
sit around. So they're very open to expressing themselves through physical movement. And recently, for Black History Month, we did a lesson on Louis Armstrong's What a Wonderful World.
Oh,
Third grade, I asked them to come up with their own lyrics to the song What a Wonderful World. And I was basically asking, what makes your world wonderful? And you would be amazed by the ideas they have. And they're not stunted by the limiting factors of, oh, is that going to sound stupid? Or like, I don't know how to write words. I don't know how to write lyrics. They just go for it. And some of them have written beautiful things like talking about their parents and talking about their friends smiling and picking flowers outside. And some of them talk about goofy things like Roblox or Call of Duty. I'm fine with it. But to say the least, they're very creative, and I always try to welcome it in the classroom.
you sound like an amazing teacher, first of all.
Thank you.
And also, it is just, as adults, when did we lose that? Like, when did we become so concerned about how we're perceived by others? And when did we lose our freedom to express our bodies and our voices in the way that makes us happy and fuels our creativity? I don't know when we lose it, at what age it's gone.
I think that's a great question. I was trying to research about that actually, and they say around the age of 7, I believe, is when our attitudes start to shift, and we start to compare ourselves and let the opinions of others and our peers inhibit our creativity. So it kind of starts at such a young age where we start to worry about what other people think, which is sad.
So, what are the benefits of creativity for kids? What does it do for kids?
I think it brings them closer. I've noticed when after we all do something creative together in the classroom, the whole energy of the room shifts and the kids are happier. If they came in kind of punky or sad, they leave more energized, like visibly.
Yeah.
I think it creates a sense of community. I think it energizes them. But I think above all, it is the purest form of self expression
Mhm.
for kids. And I think that we all as humans have a lot that we can let out in our souls. And I think creativity is the easiest avenue to get that out.
Yeah. And it seems like that shouldn't just be important for kids. I feel like we need that in adulthood.
I agree.
As we talk about creativity at work, why is creativity equally as important in adulthood?
Mm. I think it connects us to our inner child ultimately. And when you think back to when you're a kid, you think about all those things you did that just brought you so much joy. Like, I'm sure we could all think of something that we randomly created, like playing dress up with our friends or making weird concoctions out of like berries and sticks outside and pretending you're cooking.
Yeah.
Right? When we think, yeah, when we think back to those things, that was what lit our souls up. And I think as adults, when we're creative, it brings us back to those childhood memories. And I think it allows us to express ourselves. And I think when we let that creativity out, we're unlocking our childhood joys and we're really just freeing our souls.
Yeah. So many of us in our jobs, if we work a 9 to 5, we're sitting in that desk chair all day. We skip a lunch or skip any time for socialization or something fun in the middle of the day. Like, I know I've been guilty of just sitting in that chair from 9 to 5 and eating at my desk and not even going for a walk. And as kids, teachers understand and parents understand the importance of giving them time for recess, time to run around, a scheduled lunch, scheduled special time to go to music class or art class or gym class or whatever the other specials are in elementary schools. Why don't we do that anymore? Because to me, like what you were describing when kids play and maybe they're mixing up berries and sticks to make soup on the asphalt at recess.
Uh-huh.
Where did that go? Because that in itself, play in itself is so creative.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what changed, but that's why we're here today, talking about how we can incorporate that back into our lives as adults.
Yes, because it's possible. I really believe it is.
So when I think about why creativity is important for me, and we'll get into this specifically at work, I recently heard about this rule called the 30-60-90 rule. Some influencer on Instagram shared that the first 30 days when you start a new job should be all about learning. You're essentially useless to your team. You're there to observe and you're there to learn how to do your job. And then in the second 30 to 60 days, you're supposed to get in the groove of executing the tasks that are a part of your job description. And then in the last 60 to 90 days, this is when you can actually start to be creative and make your mark at work and put your stamp on what you're doing. That makes how you work different than just executing the tasks. This is the time when you have deliverables that are unique to you. And so for me, I noticed that 60 to 90 days when I first started my current job was when I started really enjoying my time at work because I could be creative and put my own spin on my projects. And so for me, creativity helps with my confidence. I was more confident in pitching my new ideas to my boss in that 60 to 90 day period. I felt confident and felt like I had the freedom to start designing my own career workshops like you now do in Canva instead of using a basic PowerPoint template. Like for me, creativity helps with my confidence so much. So that's why it's helpful for me.
I love that. And I think that's true of so many people. I think it just builds confidence and it makes you realize that you have good ideas and you have potential and you have those deliverables that you can say, look, I made this.
Yeah,
So satisfying.
it is. It's so fulfilling. And that really moves us into our topic, creativity at work. So I think we can both agree we still need to be creative as adults. We need this. We have to be, whether or not society fuels this need, or supports us in being creative as adults. I wanted to tell you about a research article that I found because I had a feeling that adults can benefit from creativity the same way that kids do from what you just shared about your job. So I found this research article in the National Library of Medicine called Being Creative Makes You Happier: The Positive Effect of Creativity on Subjective Well-Being. And the article described two different studies. The first study was conducted with 256 undergraduate students and 291 working adults who self-reported their creativity, their stress levels, and what they called their subjective well-being. And after controlling for the effect of stress, the study found that there was a positive relationship between creativity and subjective well-being. So what the study is sharing is that creativity makes you happier and vice versa. Being happier makes you more creative. It's a feedback loop, which I thought was so important to know because these are adults who are experiencing the benefits of creativity.
That's amazing. That's so hopeful to hear and
Yeah.
believable. Like it makes perfect sense. The happier you are, the more you want to create. And then the happier you are because you created. So it is that feedback.
Yeah. And then there was a second study in the article, and this one was conducted with 68 undergrad students between the ages of 19 and 29, which is essentially our generation, Gen Z. And these undergrads were split into an experimental and a control group. And both groups had to do with a study called a divergent thinking activity. The experimental group had to do a creativity priming task before moving on to the divergent thinking activity. And people in the control group just had to do the activity without the priming task. The participants who did the creativity priming task to get them ready to be creative, they had higher creative performance than the control group, which I also thought was super interesting. Creativity improves performance and productivity. And when we prime ourselves to be creative, we are better at being creative too.
That makes perfect sense. I think when we're primed, which I guess you would say by priming, you're probably putting yourself in your optimal mental state. It makes you want to be creative. So I think that there are ways that we can get ourselves into that positive mindset before we're going to create.
Based off of what you just said, the question of the day is how can we be more creative at work? Because I would argue that if creativity is important in adulthood, it's important at work because work takes up so much of our waking lives. So I would love to know, how can someone who doesn't view themselves as creative or doesn't have an inherently creative job, or yeah, they just feel like creativity doesn't come naturally to them, how can they prime themselves to be creative, whether it's at work or in life?
I think that's a great question. I feel like there's so many little things we can do to prime ourselves. The first thing that came to mind was an environmental change. And I think that could be big or small. So go outside, change rooms. Like if you work from home, instead of working in your office, work in the kitchen. But I think an environmental change could also be big, like maybe taking a trip. I think that that can prime your creativity or taking a drive. So I think an environmental change is really helpful. And then I think enhancing your workspace to be intentional for you. So as you can see, I have a lot of plants in my room because that's what inspires me. But for other people, it might be artwork, posters, crystals, I think enhancing your workspace to be conducive to getting into that flow state is really helpful. Even lighting a candle sometimes helps me, or dimming the lights and just using like lamps, like not no overhead lighting,
Yeah.
just to make it cozy. So enhancing the space that you dwell in.
I am a candle hoarder. I have so many candles. I'm always lighting candles all day when I'm working from home. I can't do it at work, but that totally works for me.
That's awesome. See, that's perfect.
Yes. I'm a Bath and Body Works extreme couponer. I will get the deals on the candles and walk out with like 6 candles from Bath and Body Works.
They're so good. They have the strongest scent. I love it.
Yeah. What else can we do?
I think getting your thoughts out. So for some people, that's journaling. For some people, it might be taking out your phone and like just talking into it, you know? But I like to journal, and I think just start writing. And journaling can be overwhelming, obviously, but I think once you just start getting thoughts out and on paper, that can spark an idea. Or it can just kind of like flush your mind of all of the craziness of the day and make you feel more in that state where you're ready to create. Another huge one for me is time in nature. So, yeah, and I think that could be beneficial for anyone. I think walks, sitting outside, outdoor meditation, focusing on nature sounds and sensations. I think that that can really spark creativity.
Yeah. I mean, even for me at work, I'm in a cubicle. So I do need to get that time outside. And also I was diagnosed with ADHD this year, so now I finally have a label for why I'm so jumpy and always need to be changing my environment, whether it's to be conducive to my creativity or just keep my mental sanity. And so I think it's really important to find not just ways to change up your environment, but ways to do it reliably that you can count on because you never know when you're going to need to just step away. And so I found a little nook on campus for the university where I work, where it's 3 different outdoor tables with umbrellas that nobody knows about. And so there are never people there. And so I always have a place to just sit and work from my laptop and do work outside, at least in the spring and summer months. And I always know I can rely on that.
That's perfect. Yes, like you found that spot where it's guaranteed so you can create that like routine too.
Yeah, and I think taking trips is so important. Like anyone who goes on vacation, when you come back, even if it's just a week off of work, you know how much more energy you have. And I think the motivation and the energy also contributes to productivity. Because self-care in general, if you are not taking care of yourself and fueling your basic needs, then your brain is not going to do something that we have evolved to do, which is be creative and generate new ideas. Like if we're focused on getting enough sleep, we're stressed at work and we just need to complete as many tasks as we can to get our work done, then I don't think our brain is going to let us come up with new ideas and be creative because it can only manage our basic needs when we're stressed. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. Yes. That I was actually going to bring that up. I think that I heard from a psychologist, I believe, the saying halt. I don't know if anyone's heard of this, but
No.
if you're starting to feel any sort of like discomfort or feel off, you have to halt, which means you ask yourself, am I hungry, angry, or anxious, lonely, or tired? And if, which I also put thirsty with tired, so HALT. Because if you're one of those things, if you halt and you're hungry, then you're not going to be able to be creative because you're missing that basic need. If you're thirsty, you're going to feel like crap because you're dehydrated, so you're not going to want to be in a creative state. So the halt helps me.
I love that. I've never heard of that before, but it makes perfect sense. Loneliness is a big one. I've definitely talked about that on the podcast before. And I think people and having new engaging conversations with people who bring ideas to the table and expose you to new things, that can also help with creativity too.
100%. That was something I was also going to bring up as a suggestion. And I think that we can talk to people in so many ways or be inspired by people in different ways, I was going to suggest talk to strangers, which
Hmm.
I think is weird, but I think when we talk to strangers, we ask questions and we get to know things about people that we normally don't interact with. So it's bringing in this whole nother element of ideas that we probably didn't have before because we're talking to like a construction worker instead of a coworker. And then I also think that this could be tricky, but I think social media could be positive if you're consuming content of creatives that are positive. I get very inspired by following people of different walks of life, like following van lifers, following people that crochet, following jazz musicians. Like I think that
Yeah.
can spark a creative idea too. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I have. Yeah, I love that. I love following artists, especially abstract artists. It's just, I get sucked into those reels and TikToks watching them splatter paint on the wall. And even in a professional sense, one thing I've noticed is that my LinkedIn account has become very curated to higher education because that's who most of my professional connections are on LinkedIn. But recently I thought to myself, like, I'm not feeling inspired because I'm seeing all of the same kind of information. It's not diverse in the topics that people are talking about. So I started, especially when I created Career Composer, I started following women entrepreneurs who are starting their own businesses like I am. And it didn't just have to be a career coaching business or a podcast. It could be people who are starting health coaching businesses or mindset coaching or any other kind of business, and hearing what those people are doing to connect with their communities or creative ideas they have for services that they can offer others that will benefit them while also help them make a living. Now my feed is curated with that, and I feel so inspired so all the time from what I see from them.
That's awesome. Yeah, because it's similar. Like they're like-minded in that you're creating something with your podcast, but they're different. So it probably sparks different ideas, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then just talking about our friend group with, you, your boyfriend Ben, Megan and Anthony, our friend Shagun, all of these people we surround ourselves with, just to come back to people. They're people who aren't just different and who have different things about them that make us creative and inspire us, but they're people who I look up to in our friend group. So I think having role models too should be something that we should all try and create for ourselves and surround ourselves with people that we really look up to and want to be like.
I love that you said that. And I think we can find them. We often find them in our friends. And I think going back to people again is when you find those true friendships, like the amazing people you just listed that we have in our lives, if you have a creative idea, tell them about it and
Mm.
show them what you made. Show them that song you wrote that you think was bad, or show them that picture you tried to watercolor that you had no idea what you were doing on. Because I think 99% of the time, those people that are in your tribe are going to be amazed by your work. And then that's going to inspire you to do it again or do it more. I just remember times where I've shown my mom or like Ben or somebody in the friend group something I've done. And I'm like, yeah, I tried to watercolor this bird and it was really bad. And they were like, what? You tried? Like, I don't mean that in a cocky way, but my point is if you have an idea and you're surrounded by people who love you, they will make you feel better about it.
I absolutely love that.
Another tip I would say that could help for priming is challenging yourself. And I think that could be anything. I think anything that pushes your limits. So whether that's physically, socially, mentally, I think doing things that embarrass you brings out creativity. um, And because it just breaks down those barriers and inhibitions, and it goes back to what you said about self-confidence. When you break down those barriers, you're building your confidence, which makes you more apt to be able to create. And then I think trying new things, trying new food, trying new drinks, trying to make new recipes, trying to drive a new way home from work, a new after work activity. I think all of that helps you be creative. I think making a vision board could be helpful because if you're a visual person, I think it's really helpful to just have your visions and your goals posted so that you can physically see them. I don't know if I've done that, Erin, but
I think I did when I moved to Salem, Massachusetts, because I was really excited for that move. So I had a vision board of what my new life was going to look like when I moved there. But I think it's a creative, like visual project to work on. But I think it's also helpful because sometimes we have to be strategic problem solvers when we're trying to achieve our goals. And it's not easy. Like, I think we can be creative in the way that we're solving problems in life. Like, if we have a goal to become financially independent by the time we're 26, how are we going to get there? You have to be creative when you're solving problems too. And if that's on your vision board, you better set goals so you can make your vision board a reality.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that you did it when you moved to a new city. I think that's awesome. Like we already said, when we halt, we have to think, are we hungry, angry, lonely, anxious, thirsty, tired? But I think also, so that's more physical, but I think prioritizing our mental health is really important. And I think specifically having time boundaries,
Mm,
because if we're overbooked, I don't think that we have that time to slow down and allow ourselves to be creative. At least when I'm not a therapist at all or anything like that. So everything I've written down is something that I've tried myself. So I wouldn't recommend anything I could try. Um, but so for me, I find if I'm overbooked and I don't have enough time to slow down, I won't feel any creative spark.
mm,
Um, and that kind of goes into my next point of making sacred self time. And I think that could be anything. Like for me, it's having a slow morning once a week, just making that time to wake up at your own pace, drink your coffee, just have a chill, relaxing morning at your own speed. I know some people are like into taking baths or other
yeah.
forms of self-care, but I would recommend that. What about you, Erin? What do you do for your sacred self-time?
Well, I absolutely love that you said that because that's actually one of my goals for this year. So, yeah, this wasn't a New Year's resolution. I actually feel like my 2025 kind of got off to a rough start, and I turned 25 in February. So I use that as a time to start fresh and make new resolutions for my year 25 in terms of my age. And so, one of the things that I want to get better at is giving myself the hour before I go to bed every night to just be me without screens. So I can use that time for whatever I want, but it can't be being on my phone. It can't be working. And I can use that time to get ready for bed, journal, I don't know, work on a puzzle or something. If I don't know, I don't do puzzles often, but if for some reason I have a puzzle, then maybe that would be a time to do it. I don't know. Read a book. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I have really tapped into my creativity lately. And especially as someone now knowing that I have adult ADHD, I've really developed an awareness that for myself, I get ideas late at night before bed. And it's because my brain is procrastinating going to bed. And I come up with ideas and I don't want to go to sleep because I'm so excited about something. But in turn, that makes me have a horrible sleep schedule and I don't get sleep. And so then the sleep and lack of sleep hurts my creativity. So I'm trying to be present without a phone, just be by myself, give my brain an hour to come up with any ideas that I have so it has time to to be creative. And then because I've already come up with those ideas, I've given my brain that space it needs, then the goal is that I get better sleep at night. So, yeah, I think that's related to kind of what you said with giving yourself one day a week to take it slow and just give yourself space.
Yes, but I love yours so much because that it's perfect because you said that's like your time where you feel most creative is at night. And they say that that's so good for your circadian rhythm, to be off the blue light the hour before you sleep. So you're helping your sleep, you're helping your creativity. I think that's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
And then I just have like three more.
Okay.
Ask questions, which we already kind of talked about in talking to strangers. And I think, oh, my last one is find your natural high. Like, find that thing that gives you that hit of dopamine and don't stop chasing it. So, that could be a playlist that you love.
Yeah.
It could be doing a crazy hike. Like, that's what it is for me. Like, doing a crazy
Yeah.
hike where you're pushing your physical limits and then you see this amazing view. It could be reading a new book, anything that makes you feel that natural high. I think those are those breakthrough moments where it opens a door and it unlocks another level of creativity.
Yeah. Yeah. And your high of going on a hike, that's not going to happen at work. If you can't be creative at work, do something creative outside of work in your free time that gives you that mental space too. I
Yes,
love that.
thank you.
Yeah. And for our listeners, Arianna is a genuinely curious person. Arianna, you're always asking amazing questions. You told me before this interview, you are a question asker and approaching life with curiosity and just trying to learn all you can about people in the world. What better way to be creative and get new ideas?
Thank you for saying that. I think you're the same way. That's probably why we get along so well.
You mentioned that kids, at least the kids that you're working with, elementary schoolers, they are so unafraid. How can you help kids who are hesitant to be creative to just go for it? And does that have any connection to adults? Like, how, if we're hesitant to be creative as adults, what should we do?
Yes, I think it can connect. I think something that I notice with the older grades, especially, is when we're about to sing, if I don't prime them, a lot of the times they'll be way more hesitant to sing. So sometimes I'll start singing a song and then I'll say, "Be my echo." And it's like very quiet and timid. So then I'll kind of have an icebreaker and I'll do some sort of crazy vocal thing and I'll like say like be my echo, woo, woo, woo. And I kind of am just trying to get them to sing as loudly as they can. So once we kind of break the ice, then they're more willing to like move to the music or to echo me and use their voices, which is like a creative process in general. So I think one thing that I do with the kids is break the ice, and I think as adults we can do that too. So that might just be like getting that first idea out on paper, even if you think it's stupid or if it doesn't make sense or it's cringy, just get it out. That's the hardest part.
Yeah. And I also have some questions that I think I'm asking myself subconsciously throughout my day, but that I think saying them out loud could really help our listeners and people listening to this podcast think about how they can be creative at work. The first question that I ask myself at work, especially if I'm trying to be creative, is how can I do my job in a way that no one else can? And that is unique to me. What makes how I do my job special? What stamp can I put on my work? Or what mark can I leave at my company that people would say, okay, Erin's been here. We know that's Erin's work. or Ariana's work? What can I do to take my work to the next level? What can I do to make my work more efficient or more impactful? And how can I leave my company better than how I found it? Asking yourself those questions, you might think a lot of those are about taking your work to the next level. Maybe it sounds like you're adding more work to your plate, trying to think about how you can do something unique and different. So you probably want to be working for a company that appreciates you or doing work that is impactful to others if you're going to put that creative energy and inject your unique way of doing things into your work. But I think asking any of those questions can all help us to just think about how we can do things differently, which is what creativity is, right?
I agree. It doesn't have to be this big thing. Like, I love how you said, how can I leave it better than I found it? That could be in such a small way. And something I do with the kids is I almost put limits on the creative activity at first if they're overwhelmed. Like, if I say, give me a sound, they're like, what does that mean? Like, the older grades, especially, will be like, what does that mean? But if we put limits on it, like if I say a short sound or if I say a body percussion, and then if I'm trying to get them to improvise after we try it with a body percussion, then we can layer on some other things like, okay, what about let's add a vocal sound? Let's add a combo of body percussion and vocal sound. So I guess my point in saying this is if we make it a small, achievable goal for creativity at work, maybe today I'm gonna send an email in a different way to communicate my idea to my boss than I normally would. Like, that's you're flexing your creativity, but in a really small way. And then I think it just builds.
I love that tip so much. Like putting limits. I do think when you have a blank slate, some people get writer's block because it's like the possibilities are endless. One example is I was tasked with co-creating a strategic plan for my office with one other person, and I'd never written a strategic plan before. So of course I was like, how the heck do I do this? But then the other person had more experience than I did, so she gave me kind of a template and guidelines. And then I could be creative with the strategies that I'm proposing that we implement as an office, but within a template. And then I could actually get words on paper.
Yes. That's such a good example of having the template. It even though it's a limiting thing, which seems counterintuitive to being creative, it helped you.
I think at this point, we have talked about why creativity is so important in work and in life. I mean, anyone listening should know. You and I are both so passionate about this topic, but that's because it truly is so important. And in the last part of our time together, I do want to talk about Gen Z for a second because the title of today's episode is Creativity at Work: Why Innovation is Gen Z's Baseline. We are having this conversation on a podcast that is geared towards young professionals and Gen Z for a reason. And that is because creativity isn't just important at work and in life. Creativity is so central to our generation. So I want to talk about that. Ariana, you and I are both Gen Z. What do you think is so unique about our generation that's different from others?
I think our generation is uniquely adventurous and open. And I think that goes along with being curious and how that is a gateway to creativity. So I think Gen Z is very apt to be creative. And I think many people in our generation are open to quitting their job and starting from scratch. We're not afraid to not have savings and be stuck. We're not afraid to be stuck. We'd rather up and leave and start over. And I think that is an amazing gift of our generation. I also think, in terms of openness, I think we're very open communicators in Gen Z. And so, having that open communication and being able to articulate our feelings and emotions helps us connect with others, which I think leads to creativity too.
Yeah. We're risk takers. We are bold for sure.
You're bold, Erin, because you moved twice and you're only 25, right?
Yeah.
That's a prime example.
Yes, I'm definitely a risk taker, that's for sure. But even when it comes down to money, we don't save. Most of us don't save the same way our parents and our grandparents did. We care about experiences. One of the things that I was thinking about related to creativity is that Gen Z has a bad rap. I think people are always talking about the negative aspects of our generation, or they're assuming negative things about us. We have a reputation for being lazy and not wanting to work. People think that we all just want to be famous because there are so many influencers today. I do think we all want to be influencers, but I don't think it's in the way people think. So I don't mean influencers on social media, although many people in our generation do aspire to be influencers as a career path. I think that our generation wants to have influence. And what I mean by that is we want to make a positive impact on the world and we want to make our voices heard, which goes back to what you shared about us being open communicators and not afraid to speak our minds. Because we're communicators, we obviously want to be heard and we want to share our ideas. Yeah, and I think this desire to influence and have impact is the common thread that truly runs through all of us in our generation, even if it's expressed differently in each person. And what I want people to get from this conversation about creativity is that we can be influential at work. It's not just about being influencers on social media. That's one career path and option now that is a very realistic option for so many people. But we can feel like we're making our mark and leaving a legacy and being impactful at work through creativity as a means to do that. That's why I'm so passionate about this conversation.
Yes, me too. I absolutely agree.
I mentioned that the title of this episode is Creativity at Work, why innovation is Gen Z's baseline. And you may notice that baseline is not one word, there's a different spelling. Ariana, what's a baseline?
So, in a very literal sense, it's the lowest pitched instrumental part in a song, and it outlines the harmonic structure of the song. But it's so much more than that. It's the foundation of the song, and oftentimes we don't even realize how important it is until you don't hear it. When the bass stops playing, it almost feels like the song loses its body, it loses its heart, and could fall apart because it's everything. I think the bass is the coolest instrument. Without the bass line, it feels unstable, I think.
So the point is, without creativity, our personal theme song, isn't stable.
Yeah, exactly.
Creativity is at the heart of who we are as humans, especially our generation.
Yes. It is. It's in every decision we make.
That is so true. Yeah, it truly is. So because we're both so passionate about this topic of creativity, I want to keep the positivity going and I want to end this episode on a super positive note. So you've talked about being an amazing elementary school music educator and you are so influential and you are truly making an impact on these kids' lives, whether they know it or not. What makes you feel like you are making an impact in your job?
Thank you so much, Erin. That means more to me than you'll know. Um, I feel very blessed in that in this career, similarly to you, because we're working with humans, we get that immediate feedback, right, from the people in front of us. So I feel like I'm making an impact because of the reactions and the responses I get from the kids. I've just noticed the more love and passion I put into the lesson, the more love and passion comes back. And when I make the time to make the lesson more engaging and exciting for the kids, they are so enthusiastic about singing and making music. And I'm seeing that impact in the moment when they're responding and they're musicking and they're singing and they're smiling. And then they come up to me and they hug me and they tell me that they love me. And I say it back because I love them too. So I I get to feel the impact a lot, which I'm so grateful for. Um, but yes, to sum it up, I just think I feel the most impact when I put the most care into what I'm doing because it comes back tenfold.
Wow. Yeah. And that really, really shows.
Thank you. Can I ask, when do you feel the most impact in your job?
I think I feel the most impact when I realize that I have unique strengths as a young career counselor. I don't come in with 20 years of experience having worked in 10 different corporate jobs. That is not my strength. But I feel the most impactful when I realize that being a career counselor who's 25 is the reason why students are meeting with me, because they are looking for someone who understands them. I'm their age. I understand what they're going through. I understand how difficult job searching is today, especially with the rise of AI and all of this changing technology, and the state of the world. But at the same time, I still come with expertise, I think, beyond my years because I was a risk taker. Like, I can speak to what it's like to relocate for work even at 25. I can speak to what it's like to have had jobs where I don't feel like I'm making an impact, and the biggest difference when you do feel like you're having that impact. So I can express that to them too. Yeah, I think that's when I feel like I'm making a difference.
Yes, I know you are. And
Oh,
yes, because you have that relatability and you're so down to earth, but you also have those experiences that give you a leg up that a lot of people our age don't have, but that allows you to help them on another level. So I just think you're amazing.
oh, I think you're so amazing too.
Thank
I
you.
really do. Yeah. And you and I both work in education for a reason, is because we're naturally driven to help people. But I think even people who work in fields that are vastly different, what they can take from what you said about, because you care so much, you put more energy into your work. That's what makes you feel like you're having an impact and you can be more creative in that way. I think we should all just choose careers that we feel so excited about, that we wake up in the morning and think, how can I be creative today to make an even bigger difference or just do my job better, you know?
Yes, 100%.
Because that is possible for every single person on this earth.
It is. I believe it.
Well, Ariana, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has been so much fun. And I really think people will gain so much from everything that you shared. And it's just so cool to hear a different kind of career where you get to hang out with kids and teach them to be creative and bang on the xylophone. And yeah, it's just so cool to hear from you.
Thank you so much, like from the bottom of my heart, for having me. And like I said before, I just think you are embodying creativity in this very moment by doing this podcast and just nailing it in every way. You're so intentional, and it's felt in every podcast I've listened to, and it's felt in speaking to you. And I just feel so blessed to be on the podcast, but also just to have you as a friend. So thank you, Erin.
Aw, you too, Ariana.
I hope you found today's episode helpful. Career Composer will be back with a new episode every other Monday. And if today's topic really resonated with you, I hope you'll consider leaving a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Reviews will really help this podcast grow so I can keep bringing you the career content that you want. You can also email me at careercomposerpodcast@gmail.com with feedback or questions, because I want to give you the career advice that you actually want to hear. That's all for now. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time and have a great day.